The deadliest blizzard in valley memory descended upon the settlement, its winds stripping warmth from every log cabin. Inside Frank Harlan's home, the fire guttered and died. Ice crept across the windows, and his breath turned to mist. He knew another night here would be his last. There was only one cabin that still glowed with a faint, warm light. Frank shoved the door open against the snow and stumbled into the whiteout, heading toward Michael Vance's place.
Michael, open the door. I can't feel my hands.
Frank? What are you doing out there? Get inside.
Michael grabbed Frank's coat and hauled him through the doorway, slamming it shut against the blizzard's fury.
How is it so warm? My cabin, the fire's dead. How are you still alive?
Michael didn't answer. He simply guided Frank toward the stove, where the heat rolled off the strange panels lining the walls. Frank's eyes settled on the walls, cork bark, glowing amber in the stove light. He had never seen insulation like this before. 6 months before the blizzard, Michael Vance traded his finest hunting knife to a Mediterranean sailor for a sled loaded with thick, strange bark. He hauled the sled through the snow-covered main street. Townsfolk stopped and stared, whispers spreading like frost.
What's all that weight for, Michael? Did you buy a load of tree skin to wallpaper your cabin?
It's cork bark. Light, fire-resistant, and it traps heat better than any lumber you've ever used.
Spongy bark that'll rot the first time it gets wet. You've been cheated, son.
The town laughed, but at the edge of the crowd, Susan Vance did not join in. Her gaze fixed on the strange bark, a question forming.
Cork bark, fireproof, that can't be true. But why would he haul it all this way if it's worthless?
Frank shook his head and walked away, his mocking laughter lingering in the cold air. Michael said nothing. He simply pulled the sled onward to his little cabin at the valley's edge, where the trees grew thick. But Susan lingered, picking up a fallen piece of cork. Her thumb pressed into the surface, spongy, light, unlike any wood she knew. Later that day, Susan followed the sled tracks to Michael's cabin. He was already nailing cork panels over the drafty log walls.
What exactly is that bark supposed to do, Michael?
It's lighter than wood, it won't catch fire easily, and it keeps the heat in better than any board.
Frank says it'll just rot when the damp gets to it.
Before Michael could answer, the door swung open without a knock. Frank Harlan stepped inside, his eyes narrowing at the half-clad walls.
Still playing with tree skin, Michael? I told you it's junk. Now you've got Susan breathing in dust from that rubbish.
It doesn't rot, Frank. Cork sheds water. You've never worked with it, so you don't know what it can do.
I know enough to see a man wasting his time. When winter comes, you'll wish you'd spent your trade on real timber.
Frank didn't wait for a reply. He shoved the door shut and stomped away, his anger trailing into the cold air.
Maybe he's not crazy after all.
Over the next week, Michael finished covering every wall. When he lit the stove, the cabin warmed so fast the windows fogged. Susan returned to find the small space toasty, despite the cold outside. She pressed her palm flat against the cork.
It's actually warm. The wall, I mean not just the air.
Told you. Traps the stove heat like a blanket.
This could change everything for winter. But Frank will never believe it.
In town, Frank rallied men outside the general store, holding up a piece of cork.
That fool Michael has nailed spongy bark to his walls. He'll freeze or burn down. Mark my words.
Susan watched from the edge of the crowd, then turned away without a word.
Telling them now would only make it worse. He has to see for himself.
So the cabin's secret stayed between Michael and Susan, while Frank's contempt echoed louder every day. That night, Susan took a scrap of cork to her own hearth. She lit a lantern and held the bark directly over the flame.
It's not catching fire, just blackening slowly. Michael was right. If it can't burn, then the whole town is wrong about him. I tested the fire claim, Michael. The cork only charred. It didn't burn.
I know. I wouldn't have put it up if it were dangerous. The real test is winter. though not a lantern.
Armed with proof, she sought out Frank the next morning, determined to change his mind.
Frank, I tested the cork over fire. It doesn't burn like wood. You are wrong about it.
A kitchen test proves nothing. Girl, when a stove falls over, then we'll see. Now leave me be.
That same week, the first hard frost descended. Chimneys worked double, and still drafts cut through the cabins. Only Michael's cork-lined walls held the cold back, but nobody else was willing to see it. The frost bit deeper every night. In Michael's cabin, the cork still held dry and warm. Frank inspected the damp walls of a neighbor's home, then delivered his verdict with a deliberate voice.
Mark my words, that cork will trap moisture inside the logs. It'll rot a cabin from the inside out.
Rot? He's inventing dangers to hide his own stubbornness. You've never seen cork fail, Frank. You are spreading fear because you won't admit you were wrong.
I've built cabins for 30 years, girl. I know what kills wood, and that bark will kill it sure as winter.
A murmur of agreement ran through the onlookers. Frank's authority swayed them more than Susan's evidence.
They don't want the truth. They want to be right alongside Frank.
Michael stayed silent at his cabin's edge, trusting the work to speak for itself in time. But time was running out. The cold tightened its grip, and the town closed its ears. Determined to prove Cork a danger, Frank called the town council to witness a public burning.
I'll show you this fireproof. Bark is false. One lick of flame, and it'll go up like tinder.
He struck a match and held it to a thick panel. The crowd leaned in. The cork charred slowly, refusing to ignite. Frank's face reddened.
It's releasing a toxic fume. Can't you smell it? That's proof. It's unsafe.
The councilmen exchanged uncertain glances. There was no smoke, only the smell of charring.
He's desperate, making up lies now. But will they see it?
I stand by my word. That material has no place in proper construction.
The council offered no ruling, leaving the matter hanging. Frank stormed out, his pride wounded. Susan slipped away unnoticed. The stalemate held, but the first real test of winter was still to come. After the council, frustration drove Susan far down the valley trail, where the snow lay untouched, and the silence felt heavier than the cold. She rounded a bend and stopped. A stand of trees she'd never seen before, their bark thick and cork-like.
This bark, it's exactly like Michael's. Could it really be cork?
She snapped off a piece and turned it in her hand. It was light, spongy, and unmistakably cork. Then she saw it. Clean cuts on low branches, a path swept free of brush. Someone cared for this place.
Who planted these? And why has no one spoken of it? If I tell the town now, they'll strip it bare in a week. I have to wait.
She tucked the proof into her coat and hurried back, the secret burning in her pocket. At Michael's cabin, she saw the warm glow through the window. She raised her hand to knock, then lowered it. This truth was too dangerous to speak aloud. Not yet. So she walked on, alone with what she knew. She barely slept. At dawn, Susan returned to Michael's door, the cork piece pressing against her palm like a stone.
I found the grove, Michael, down the South Valley. You planted those cork oaks, didn't you?
You went that far? Yes. I brought acorns from a Mediterranean trader years ago. I've been tending them ever since.
He reached for a worn letter from the mantel, a sketch of a cork oak, notes on cultivation scrawled in a foreign hand.
You should have told the town. You should tell them now. People are freezing while you sit on a forest of bark.
If I reveal it now, they'll strip the bark wrong and kill the trees. They need to trust it first. Trust what they see in this cabin.
He's been thinking years ahead, while the rest of us can't see past the next frost. Then we wait. But if a blizzard kills someone because we stayed silent, that guilt will follow us forever.
I know, and I'll carry that if it comes. But giving them cork before they believe in it would be like handing a man a rope he thinks is a snake.
The valley's salvation lay hidden among those oaks, but for now, Michael would let winter speak louder than any voice. Across the valley, Wood piles shrank while Michael's cabin stayed warm on a handful of logs. Frank kicked at a neighbor's empty woodshed and glared toward the distant chimney that never stopped smoking.
That man hoards wood. How else does his place glow like midsummer while we freeze?
The grove could heat every home. But if they don't trust the bark, they'll destroy it.
Stay patient, Susan. The cold will teach them what words never could.
Then, the first true snowstorm roared down from the peaks, burying the valley in drifts. In Michael's cabin, the cork drank the stove's warmth. Outside, frost crept through the town's unchinked log walls.
Curse that bark. My walls are icing over, and there's nothing left to burn.
If someone dies tonight, because we stayed silent, that guilt will never wash off.
But the cork held firm. The grove remained hidden, waiting for the storm that would finally break the town's blindness. A mountain trapper stumbled into town with a warning. A blizzard like no other was racing down from the North Ridge. The town hastily called a council. Michael appeared at the door, dragging a sled piled with cork panels.
I have enough spare cork to insulate a room in every home. Take it. It will keep you alive when the storm hits.
Are you insane? Nail that spongy bark to a wall and the first stove spark will turn a house into an inferno.
My cabin is lined with it head to toe. I burn half the wood. You do. And I am warm. You know this, Frank.
Frank slammed his fist on the table. One cabin proves nothing. I say it's a fire trap, and I won't see this town burn. The council refused to endorse the cork. Michael was ordered to remove the panels from the hall.
If you won't take them inside, I'll leave them out here. Anyone with sense can still use them before the snow blinds us all.
They're closing their ears because Frank's pride is louder than the coming storm.
The snow thickened, and the cork panels sat untouched. The town had been given its only shield, and they had cast it aside. The blizzard hit like a collapsing wall of snow and wind, erasing the world outside every window. Inside Michael's cabin, the stove's small flame cast a steady glow against the cork-lined walls.
The cork is doing its job. We'll last this out.
But the others, they never took the panels. How many will freeze tonight?
In Frank's cabin, the last ember died. The cold rushed into the walls, and his breath turned to ice.
No wood, no coal, nothing left but that cursed bark I mocked.
A mile away, a neighbor's cabin went dark. The family inside had no heat left to fight the blizzard. The wind howled like a beast prowling for cracks, but the cork-lined cabin held steady.
Frank's pride will cost lives tonight, but we couldn't force them to listen.
The cork held firm, a pocket of warmth in a valley, being swallowed by cold.
Those cork panels at the meeting hall, they might be the only thing that can hold heat in this storm.
Frank shoved open his door and plunged into the whiteout, fighting toward the meeting hall. The hall was locked tight, its door frozen shut. Frank beat his fists against the wood until his knuckles bled.
I can't break it. I am too weak. Michael's place, it's the only chance left.
He turned from the hall and staggered through the drifts, each step a war against the wind.
That man, the one I mocked, might be my only salvation now.
His legs gave out twice. Each time, he crawled until he could stand again.
Just a few more steps, the light.
The wind screamed, trying to push him back, but the faint glow of Michael's cabin grew closer. Pride had long abandoned him. Now, only the desperate will to live kept his legs moving. A faint thumping cut through the storm's howl. Michael straightened and moved to the door. He unlatched it, and the wind threw it wide. Frank lay sprawled on the threshold, snow already burying his legs.
Susan, help me. He's frozen solid.
Together, they dragged his dead weight inside and slammed the door against the white fury. They stripped his frozen coat and wrapped him in every blanket they had, laying him beside the stove. The cork walls radiated a dry, steady heat. Frank's shudders slowly quieted.
The walls, the bark.
His eyes, still glazed with frost, traced the amber panels. He said no more.
He's seeing it for the first time. Really seeing it.
The blizzard screamed outside, but inside, the cork held firm. Frank was alive, and the truth had finally broken through.
Where did you get this bark, Michael? It's nothing like any wood I've ever seen.
It's cork, grown from Mediterranean oaks. I brought acorns here years ago and planted them down the South Valley.
I found the grove, Frank. It's real. Acres of cork oaks, hidden away. Michael's been tending them in secret.
He's been planning this for years, and I mocked him every step of the way. I called it tree skin and said it would rot. I was a fool, Michael. A proud, blind fool.
You held to what you knew. But now you've felt it. When this storm breaks, I'll need help to harvest the grove the right way.
You'll have my help and every tool I own. If we survive this, I'll nail cork on every wall in this valley myself.
The bark must be stripped carefully, or the trees die. Michael can teach us. Then we'll show the town.
Frank nodded, his hand resting on the cork panel. The man who had mocked it now clung to it like a promise. Outside, the storm roared on. But inside that cork-lined room, the first true alliance of the winter had been forged. The storm raged through the night, and they rationed the last of the food. The fire burned low. At dawn, the wind died. The sudden silence was almost painful. Michael unlatched the door and shoved against a wall of snow. The world beyond was a white, glittering tomb.
There's no smoke, no sound from any chimney.
How many didn't make it through the night?
Frank shouldered past them and staggered toward the nearest cabin, his face grim. They found 3 homes collapsed, crushed by snow and ice. No signs of life inside. A few survivors stumbled out of their frost-encased rooms, their faces blank with shock.
We have to get them all to Michael's cabin. It's the only place still warm.
With the cork grove still hidden, they began the grim work of saving those who remained. Susan gathered the able-bodied men and led them into the white wilderness.
Follow me. There's enough bark down that valley to insulate every standing wall.
The grove emerged from the snow, its thick-barked trees almost black against the white.
Cut here, but not too deep. Leave enough bark so the tree heals.
The men worked fast, stripping the outer bark and stacking it onto sleds. By noon, they hauled the first sleds into town, the spongy bark stacked high.
Bring them to the meeting hall. That's where we start.
Frank climbed the ladder himself, nailing panel after panel with a ferocity that bordered on prayer. As the cork lined the walls, the hall's stove began to hold real warmth. The survivors crowded inside, some weeping as they felt genuine heat for the first time in days. The meeting hall, now lined with the same warm cork that saved them, fell silent as Frank Harlan stood before the council.
I was wrong. Everything I said about Michael Vance's cork was wrong. I called it tree skin, a fire trap, a fool's gamble. But it's the best insulator I've ever seen. It held heat when nothing else could. And it saved my life. That grove down the South Valley, Michael planted it. It belongs to us now. We should protect it and use its bark.
The council members, their own homes barely livable, nodded in grave agreement. Michael stood near the back, his face unreadable, but Susan saw his hands tremble slightly.
Michael, I owe you an apology and my life.
Michael stepped forward and took it. No words, just a firm grip that spoke of forgiveness. Susan watched from the crowd, a tear slipping down her cheek as the town finally saw her brother's vision. That day, Cork ceased to be a fool's experiment and became the valley's salvation. In the weeks that followed, the sound of hammers echoed across the valley.
Michael, tell me if I am nailing this wrong.
You are doing it right, Frank. Tighten that corner.
Frank's hands, once so quick to mock, now worked with a craftsman's care. A small workshop was set up near the hall, where men and women shaped the bark into uniform sheets. The grove, once hidden, now stood as the heart of the valley's warmth, and children played beneath its branches. Soon, travelers passing through began calling it Cork Valley. Children who had once shivered now played between the oaks, their laughter filling the air. Frank and Michael worked side by side, the old rivalry buried in the sawdust. The man who had been mocked had given the valley its future. Months later, Susan sat by candlelight, a leather-bound journal open before her.
That winter nearly broke us, but a strange bark from a forgotten sea held us together. I wrote down every test, every word of ridicule, and the day the town finally understood.
Through the frost-framed window, she watched Michael and Frank raise a new community hall. They worked in unison, no longer divided by pride or mockery.
We nearly lost each other. Now we build together.
The valley, once frozen, had thawed into something new, and the cork oaks stood sentinel, their bark guarding warmth for all the winters to come. Michael's dream, once his alone, had become the valley's heritage, and, in the quiet of her cabin, Susan closed the journal on a story that had just begun. A year to the day after the blizzard, the town gathered in the cork-lined hall.
Last winter, I almost killed us all with my pride. I called Cork a danger, but it was my stubbornness that was the real threat. Michael Vance saw what we refused to see. He planted the grove and waited, even when we mocked him. That patience saved my life, and it saved this valley. We owe him a debt no words can repay.
Michael stood quietly near the back, his sister Susan at his side. He needed no glory. Then the mugs were raised.
To Michael and the Cork Oaks, may they warm every home in Cork Valley for 100 winters.
The hall rang with voices, not of regret, but of a shared future. And outside, the snow fell gently on the Cork Oaks, a quiet reminder of the storm that had forged them into a community. A man had nailed cork bark to his walls, and in doing so, had warmed an entire valley. Later, when the celebration faded, Michael returned alone to his cabin at the valley's edge. He ran his hand over the cork bark that had once drawn ridicule.
They called it tree skin. Now it shields an entire valley.
He allowed himself a small, quiet smile, the reward of patience. Through the frost-framed window, the grove stood visible against the snow, healthy and strong. The valley lay deep in snow, but its heart was no longer cold. One man's stubborn faith, planted as acorns in a hidden valley, had grown into a legacy of warmth. Michael turned from the window, his eyes resting on the cork wall that had started it all. The blizzard was a memory, but the bark remained, a promise for every winter to come. And so the valley slept under snow, wrapped in the warmth of one man's dream.